Hey guys, welcome to Poor Man Mods. I just got the Supra back. It was out of town for a little bit. I took it down to JE Import Performance because I had them install a Tomei 1.5-way differential. I know it's a little bit of an aggressive differential. I had previously the factory limited slip in this car, and I had it shimmed with the Weir Performance shim kit, and it still acted very much like an open rear a lot of the times. A burnout, it would do posi, but anything else you wanted to do, it acted like an open rear. So I had them do a 1.5-way Tomei diff install, and since I'm driving this to Vegas and back, which is 5,000 miles, I decided to have a professional do it because, you know, I don't need to learn on something that I'm going to be testing 5,000 miles on. So I let them handle it, but today we still have a lot more prep we're going to be doing for our Supras in Vegas trip. A bunch of stuff I'm going to cram in this video. Might not be totally step-by-step, but the first thing I want to do is not really a go-fast part, but definitely a race car part. And I'm going to be installing this very nice fluid damper, getting rid of the unreliable or, you know, non-trustworthy factory damper. These old harmonic balancers have a tendency to break and separate, which is not good, especially on a 5,000 mile road trip. So I'm going to be putting on this fluid damper, which could arguably be a bit overkill for my car, but it's certainly not going to hurt. And while this is off, I'm going to do the crank sensor, and then I need to drop the fuel tank and tackle some issues back there. So I've already got the car on jack stands up in the air. Let's get that factory balancer off and get this fluid damper on with our new crank sensor. Okay, so I have my 21mm socket on the crank bolt with my breaker bar coming over here, and it's touching the top of the frame right here. So what's going to happen, when I turn the key, the engine is going to rotate this way, and since my breaker bar is wedged on top of that frame, it's not going to allow the bolt to rotate. So if the engine's going to rotate this way, it's effectively loosening the bolt. So all we have to do is bump the starter, and that should break it loose. Make sure you have your breaker bar on top of this frame rail, not underneath, or it'll go whoosh and fly across your shop. So we'll give this a try. Yes, it did.
Oh shit.
Yep. I apologize for such the terrible camera angle, but I have no idea how else I could show you this. But let's see if I can get this thing off. I've had it off twice before. To no surprise, I could not get the balancer off by hand or by gently prying, so I had to put this harmonic balancer removal tool on there, and boy, are the clearances close. I really don't feel like removing the radiator. Might have to, but phew, that is close. So I have two M8 by 1.25 bolts going into the balancer, and then you tighten the large bolt in the center, and it should pull it off. Hit the oil cooler a little bit, but should be okay. So now that the harmonic balancer is off, I wanted to replace the crank sensor. There's nothing wrong with it, but I want to do it as preventive. And as you can see, there's the sensor there, and you can see the bolt securing it. The timing chain tensioner, the timing belt tensioner is kind of in the way, but the alternator is definitely in the way of me getting a straight shot at that bolt. And of course, in the last video, I installed this new alternator and didn't do the crank sensor then. So we're going to yank this alternator off and hopefully get access to that crank sensor, replace it, and then we'll move on to installing that fluid damper. Okay, now that the alternator's gone, we should be able to get right on that bolt for the crank sensor. Okay, so here is the original 1JZ crank sensor that I removed, and here is the new crank sensor that I got from Drift Motion. This says it's for a 1J and a 2J. The harness is, you know, about half as long. Hopefully that doesn't pose a problem. It shouldn't, but it is just worth noting if you're gonna get a crank sensor from Drift Motion for your JZ. This is how long the harness is, and this is how long mine was, and that's unmodified, so just keep that in mind, but we'll put this new one in. There was nothing wrong with my old one. I'm going to keep it as a spare, but I just wanted to do this as preventative for my 5,000 mile drive across the country. So, pretty good insurance. Before I get this fluid damper on, I'm going to try to clean up the crank a little bit with some Scotch-Brite. They are a pretty tight fit, so I just want to make it as accepting for the fluid damper as I can. And no, I'm not going to be replacing this front seal. It's either the front seal or the oil pan leaking a little bit. I'm not going to do that before my road trip. That's going to happen after my road trip, and I do a 1.5J build. And I'll spray some WD-40 on there. Also going to lube up the inside of here with some WD-40, and hopefully it'll slide on at least a little bit, and then we can draw it in with the crank bolt. I put some anti-seize on the crank bolt. We'll see if the pulley's on there far enough for us to get this started and then to draw it in. Okay, well now, since we're spinning the engine, that's pretty much as tight as we can make it now, and since the car's off the ground, putting it in gear isn't really going to help, because the torque spec for this thing is 239 foot-pounds, which is a lot. So to do that, we're going to do that probably at the end of this video, where we put the car on the ground and try to torque this thing with the wheels on the ground. So now, let's move on to the fuel pump. All right, we got the fuel tank dropped. I actually have done 2 videos on doing the fuel pump on this car, totally step-by-step. So if you need to see how to do the fuel pump step-by-step or get this gas tank out step-by-step, look for those 2 videos. I can try to link to them, but I didn't show how to drop it in this video because I've already done it twice. So what I'm doing with the goal here is these 2 lines right here on the fuel pump bracket, they're pretty corroded and they don't give me any confidence. They don't look that good, and some of the lines in the car don't look that good either. I'll show you those in a bit. I might replace them. But I have this brand new bracket, which I got off eBay. Apparently these are hard to find, so hopefully this fits. As you can see right here, this line, you might be able to see. Yeah. So this is the feed line, the pressure line, and years ago when I first did the fuel pump, this line was totally corroded and I had to cut it, and that's why there's this section of hose on here. It's supposed to have this inverted flare that goes to the fuel filter. So I'm actually doing a fuel filter, and then the line that connects from here to the filter I am replacing with a nice AN line, and we're gonna get rid of this rusty stuff here. But since this is rusty and corroded, I did break one of these bolts in the past. I think I've got some silicone right here, I think, holding it down, which that doesn't seem to cause a problem, but to get these bolts loose, it could be a struggle. So let me show you a trick. Okay, so this tank is only about half full, so it shouldn't be that flammable. I'm gonna torch these bolts here and should break them loose. Okay, ready? Just kidding. You don't want to do that. I've had this soaking with Seafoam Deep Creep for about 2 days now. I just totally soaked this whole area to try to give these bolts the best chance that they have at coming out. Now the factory bolts are just regular zinc coated steel. When I did the fuel pump the first or second time, I put these stainless fasteners in. So hopefully they break loose a little bit easier. Wish me luck. Okay, that one's loose. Oh, okay. This is not scripted or wow. Wow. Fantastic. They're all loose. This was not scripted, people, I promise. Holy crap. Now, am I gonna drill and tap and repair this broken one? Probably not. And this line is an evap line, I believe. This is your return, this is your feed, and my return line on the car near the tank is pretty corroded, so I think I'm gonna redo the entire return line. I might be doing a whole new feed line too with AN stuff. I just wanna make it good, reliable, and this really bad rust and corrosion here just does not make me feel good because I've seen lines rupture before, and I don't want this to happen when I'm in the middle of the desert. Here are the fuel lines that are attached to the car, and there is the fuel filter. This guy right here is the return, so this is coming from the fuel rail and going back to the tank. And as you can see, it doesn't look very happy. So when the fuel pump bracket attaches to this line, it uses a 5/16 fuel hose. I think I'm just gonna replace this entire pipe with 5/16 fuel hose. This, I believe, is an evap line that goes to the charcoal canister, which I don't have anymore. So it is corroded, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's just vapor that goes through it. I'm just going to let it be. And there's the OEM lifetime fuel filter. I'm going to remove that and replace it. But you can see right there is a hard line. That goes to the fuel rail. So the line that I mentioned earlier that I'm replacing is this one. It has a banjo bolt on this end. I'm replacing this with a nice AN piece, but that does not look, does not give me any confidence that I will be able to remove that fitting and not break the line. So I ordered everything to pretty much make a whole new AN fuel line from the filter to the rail, so I'm going to be replacing everything. If I wasn't doing a 5,000 mile road trip, I would probably let this be until it became an actual problem. But my luck, something would happen right there, or the filter will get clogged. And I want to actually cut this filter open and see how clogged it is. Toyota claims these are lifetime. This has 100,000 miles on it now, and it's 30 years old. So I want to see if it's even dirty, if it even needed replaced. So I'm sure it's going to be fun getting that fitting off, but I'm going to try to get that off and then get this filter out of here. I should probably just cut that line. Bastards. So I just cut the lines to get this thing out quick and easy, and I wanted to see how hard the fittings were actually to get off. The banjo bolt came out pretty easily, and the inverted flare on the other side came out pretty easily, but if you saw, the line rotated with it, which that would not happen on the car, so we have to hold that line still. So let's see what happens when the line stays stationary. And yep, the line broke right off the flare, so if I tried to do this in the car, that line would have broken anyway, so it's a good thing I'm replacing this. Look at all of that. It's like kidney stones. And this is, you know, the front of the filter. This is the high pressure side, the inlet, and this is the outlet side. And that whole filter media is covered in this stuff. Whew. 100,000 miles, 30 years. I guess it's more like 35 years, but whatever. Wow. That is disgusting. And here's the inside of the filter. My oh my. And this thing made over 500 horsepower. Whew. That is crazy. Absolutely crazy. This thing is like full of kidney stones. Disgusting. I'm glad I'm replacing it. I don't know how much life it had left. I'm sure 30 years is a lifetime, but no one ever tells you what lifetime is. Okay, changing things up a bit. I was originally going to use an OEM filter, but the out fitting is an M14 by 1.5 inverted flare fitting. And all the ones that I could find, I ordered a couple of these fittings, the flare section isn't long enough. So it would bottom out on this flange here, but it wouldn't actually seat on the inverted flare, which made me not trust it. So, I'm still going to use the line that I got from Night Run Garage, but I went with an Automotive fuel filter. That's just -6 AN, which connects right to this line here that I got from Night Run Garage. I'm not sure what the correct orientation is because, as you can see, it's making a loop here. So, I'll get this tank lifted up. I'm going to wait for a friend because, like I said, this is half full of gas, and it's not the easiest thing to do. So, I'm going to wait to get some help to put this thing up, and then we will run all the lines. I added a new section of hose here for the return, and this will just make it easier to connect to here when it's in the car, because it would be kind of difficult to put it here. So that's what Toyota did. So you have a little section here, clamped here, and I'll add a barb here. This will connect to the evap line, go into the engine bay. That doesn't really do anything. And then we'll run our -6 AN hose from there up to the fuel rail. Shouldn't be too hard, but I'm going to wait for a friend to help me out with this. This is why we can't have nice things with this car. So I figured while I'm waiting for a friend to come over and help me raise the fuel tank, I've got some time I can do the transmission fluid by myself. Well, I guess this car is just so used to being half-assed its entire life that it won't let me do nice things for it, and I've got to half-ass it. So usually when you do transmission fluid or differential fluid, you know, the rule of thumb is loosen or remove the fill plug first. That way, if you remove the drain all your fluid out, and the fill plug is stuck, you're not screwed. So you always try to remove the fill first. Well, in the case of the Supra here, the fill came out beautifully. No problem at all. But the drain is foobar. I don't understand what's going on. I did this fluid, you know, when I first 5-speed swapped this car, or not swapped it, but put the transmission in, back in like 2013. So the fluid is 10 years old, and I wanted to put new fluid in for the 5,000 mile drive. Even though the fluid is probably okay, I still wanted to put nice new fluid in it. Well, the drain plug simply will not come out. It is completely destroying itself. It is stuck. I've even tried putting a chisel on it and hammering around it to get it to spin, and the chisel is just destroying the bolt. So, gonna half-ass it, because that's what the car wants me to do. So, in a year or so, I will be removing the whole engine and transmission anyway, and I'll remedy that drain plug later. But for today, to get at least some fluid out, the car is currently on 4 jack stands. I'm just gonna drop the rear and let as much drain out of the fill plug as possible, lift it back up and put some fresh new fluid in it. So the car's so used to being half-assed, I guess I'll half-ass it, okay? All right, fine. Yep, got the front all jacked up. Just draining what I can. Slowly but surely. As you saw in the last clip, we had the car jacked up high in the front with the fill plug out to drain out as much fluid as possible. I have no idea how much fluid we got out. Maybe a half a quart, maybe a quart. I don't freaking know. I tried to do the right thing, and this car said, nope, not today. So we drained out as much as we could, and if you ever tried to add fluid to this car, the fill plug is in not the best spot. So to make things easier, I took the shifter out. I'm gonna pour my fluid in the shifter hole, and I've got my buddy Rick sitting behind the camera, and he's gonna watch until it overflows out of the fill plug. And when it overflows out of the fill, it's full, and we can put the plug back in. So let's see if I can not make a mess here. So there's about half a quart. I'm gonna wait a little bit, wait for the fluid to trickle down, and see if Rick sees it pouring out.
Yep, right there.
Really? Perfect. That was pretty much one whole quart, so not as much as I would have liked. Not 3.5, but I guess 1 quart of fresh fluid is better than nothing. Okay, I did not film reinstalling the tank. Like I said, I've done 2 fuel pump videos before where I did everything step by step. And now, because it's not a Toyota filter, it doesn't have the bracket, and there's really no good mounting point back here, especially when using the Night Run Garage fuel line. Like, I'm not sure if it's right or what. It did not want to go in the stock location. It did not make sense. So my filter is now sitting here. It was kind of just in limbo. It wasn't anywhere close to being able to use the Toyota bracket. So I just took some steel here, painted it black, put some foam on top of here to give the filter a little cushion, and then hose clamped it to it, just like how the fuel pump is inside the tank. So this isn't going anywhere now, and it's -6 on both sides. So now I have a -6 line going directly from the filter all the way up to the fuel rail. And then I also eliminated the stock fuel return because that was pretty rusty. So now I have a 5/16 rubber fuel hose going from the fuel pump bracket. I have a little split here just to make install a little easier. I connected this side of the hose to the fuel pump bracket and then raised the tank up. And then I had this barb hanging here, and I could run my return line alongside my feed line all the way up to the fuel rail. So where I have the fuel lines kind of going up above my exhaust, I of course put some heat wrap around there to protect them. And I used some of the stock like fuel line clips just to keep everything together here, and just secured everything with zip ties and a couple of the factory brackets, and just ran it on up to the fuel rail and to the regulator. Took a while to keep everything, you know, somewhat tidy, and making the AN lines is pretty difficult. It was my first time doing it, so this took a while, but now I trust the fuel system a lot more on the 5,000-mile drive. So we finished up the fuel system, and I wasn't planning on getting this done for the video, but I figured I'd show you since it's done. I did change my fog lights, which are on this bumper. These fog lights that I put on, I actually put on my 4Runner a couple months ago, and I absolutely fell in love with them. Not only do they unintentionally match my headlights, I do like the light output, but I hate the look of them. It doesn't fit the car. This is an 80s car, and these look very not 80s, and it's just not period correct, but what is correct on this car. But I hate the look, but I like the light output, and these fog lights match it perfectly, and I guess make it look a little better, because the old ones were regular cube lights, but they were amber and they didn't match at all, and it kind of ties it in. But what's really cool about these lights and I highly, highly, highly recommend these pretty much for any vehicle. If you can figure out a way to mount them, I highly recommend them. These have a high and a low beam, and the beam actually moves. So the low beam is amber, the high beam is white, and it's absolutely fantastic. And these little guys are brighter than those. When I turn these on, the low beam, the amber overpowers everything, and then the high beam is just ridiculous. So driving through the desert at night shouldn't be a problem with this. But let me show you just how crazy these lights are, and if you're interested in them, I'll put a link in the description to them. If you're not happy with your light output at all, or if you just want a little bit more light, I can't recommend these more. Like, they are ridiculous. So let me show you. Low beam, high beam, low beam, high beam. Now let me show you their light output on the wall. It's ridiculous. And I'm just going to be showing you the light output from the fog lights. I'm going to be covering up these headlights. Okay, so I have the headlights covered. This is just the ambient light from the back of the shop shining, and then the fog lights, which are on the low beam setting. Then I'll go to high beams. Check that out. So the beam actually moves like it's a high and a low, and both settings are totally ridiculous. This low beam is brighter than the low beams coming from the regular headlights, and the high beam is stupid bright too. But I'll show you what it looks like with the headlights on as well. So that was removing one towel. It didn't do much. And that was the other. These little cube lights are stupid. Stupid bright. So low beam with the headlights, high beam with the headlights. So it's a little brighter, but God, they are ridiculous. After everything I've done in this video and everything I've done over the past several months, I think I can say everything that I can think of that this car needed to do this drive to give me peace of mind, I have done. There's a couple things that I wanted to do to this car, which I don't think I'll have time for. In a couple days, I will be taking this car to New Jersey Fuel Fest. It seems like a pretty fun event, and I registered the car for that. So I'm pretty much getting the car ready for that, which that will take up some time. And then after that, it's only about 3 more weeks until we leave for the event, and the things that I wanted to do, I don't think I'll get around to them. So I am happy enough though, the car is as ready as it ever will be for this trip. I've acquired all the spare parts that I can think of that make sense to bring. So the car is pretty much good to go. Everything that I could think of that the car needed, absolutely needed, has been done. But the car is not perfect. Like I said, there's some wants that I wasn't able to address, but all of the really important stuff is taken care of, and at this point, I almost trust the car. Almost. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope maybe you learned something, especially with the fuel system. And yes, I am very eager for this trip. I'm sure something will happen, and I'm sure it'll be interesting. It's never a non-interesting moment with this car. It always makes for a good time, whether it's a good time in the moment or looking back and laughing. So wish me luck on this journey. And if you are going to make it to Supras in Vegas, hopefully I will see you guys out there, and you can come say hi. So thanks for watching this video, and of course, thank you all for your support. It would mean a lot if you could like, share, comment on this video, all that good stuff. Subscribe. The algorithm has not been friendly to me lately, so anything you can do to help would be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys in the next video, or maybe see you in Vegas. See ya.